Okay, welcome everyone. Whoops. Let me do that again for the camera. Thank you, and welcome. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about the prophecies of 2012, which is the completion of the Mayan calendar. And before we talk about the prophecies, I want to speak to you a little bit about the context in which the prophecies happen, which is a culture of the indigenous Americas that has a mythology very different from our Western mythology. And at the core of that difference is a different relationship to time. Because we understand only one kind of time, which is time that flies like an arrow, in which the future is always ahead of us, the past is always behind us. The Mayan, together with all of the other indigenous cultures of the Americas, understood that there were many kinds of time. Now, this seems like a very foreign thought to us, but they understood that there was another kind of time that turned like a wheel, that didn't fly like an arrow, a kind of time in which you could influence events that had occurred in the past, in which you could nudge destiny. And it's with this understanding of time that the prophets of old were able to witness events that would occur thousands of years later. The prophecies of 2012 speak of an apocalyptic time. They speak about the end of time, not the end of the world, but the end of time, the end of a particular relationship to time. The culture that best articulated these prophecies were the Mayans, who have actually a long count calendar that goes for 23,400 years, 23,400 years long. Our calendar is 365 days long. Imagine one that went for almost 24,000 years. And this calendar was based on an alignment with the galactic center, with the very center of the galaxy, so that our solar system would come into perfect alignment with the galactic center. You know, astrologically and astronomically, what tremendous influences a planetary alignment has when we have 2 or 3 planets aligned with each other. That you have tremendous difference in tides, in hospital admissions, in moodiness, mood swing. Imagine an alignment with the center of the galaxy itself, an event that occurs only once every 24,000 years. It's the beginning of a new time. And the Mayans, together with the Hopi, with the Inca, with the Aztec, and many, many other indigenous cultures, even Nostradamus, from an entirely different part of the world, predicted this would be a time of tremendous upheaval. The Hopis speak of it as the period of Koyanasquatsi, of the earth in upheaval, the earth in turmoil. The Inca talk about it as the Pachacuti, that's setting the world right again. Because for the indigenous peoples in the Americas, the world was turned upside down with the arrival of the conquest, of the conquistadors. You had kings and queens and royal families turn into slaves. You had child molesters speaking the word of God. You had ignorant barbarians becoming rulers. And all of the nobility and the medicine people of the Americas were forced to work like animals in the fields and in the mines to feed the never-ending appetite of the Western god for gold. So a tremendous upheaval, a tremendous Pachacuti occurred. The prophecies speak about a new Pachacuti, a new time of upheaval happening in 2012, when the world would be set right again. The world of the indigenous peoples. They speak about the extinction of the invaders, and not that the Europeans that came to the Americas would die off, simply that their way of life would become extinct, would reveal itself and expose itself for what it really was, which it has happened today. We see that the predatory relationship with nature, that the Western notion that all of the animals and all of the forests belong to humans has exhausted itself. We've depleted the planet. But the Inca began to notice signs of this many years ago, because their prophecy said that before the great upheaval, there would be signs. And some of the signs included the disappearance of the condor. The condor is the bird of the Andes. And there was one point not too long ago, about 20 years ago, when there were less than 20 condors left in the Andes. They spoke about the drying of the high mountain lagoons. The high mountain lagoons are the source of water for people that have 6-7 months of dry season. So their water supply would become exhausted. They saw the beginning of the glaciers receding, of the glaciers pulling back. They spoke about the wrath of our Father, the Sun, the wrath of the Father. And these are Andean peoples that live at 18,000 feet altitude, directly beneath the hole in the ozone, the tear in the ozone. So they felt the wrath of the sun. They saw that their flocks of llamas and sheep and alpacas were having mutations. They were deformations in their animals. They saw that their infant mortality rates increased tremendously because of the exposure to very harmful radiation from space. So they lived right below the tear in the ozone. These signs indicated to them that the time was near. And as part of their task was not only to protect the prophecy, but to deliver it. But the prophecy was not only a body of announcements of what might happen with the climate crisis and global crises that we're facing today. It was also a series of processes. So the prophecy was not only information, it contained a series of processes that would be critical for the birth of a new kind of human that the species spoke about, that the prophecy spoke about, a new kind of human that would appear in the planet during our lifetimes. And the processes that accompany the prophecy were designed to awaken regions of our brain that had not been fully coupled, fully engaged yet. Regions of our brain that appeared for the first time evolutionarily about 150,000 years ago, when the human brain nearly doubled in size with the appearance of two new structures, the neocortex, the new brain, that sat on top of our old limbic mammalian brain that we share with all of the mammals. Suddenly, there's a new brain that appears. The neocortex, which is the brain of Einstein, of Beethoven, of Bach, of mathematics, of astronomy. And in the very front part of this new brain, the frontal lobes of the brain appear, which is the brain of foresight. It's a brain that some neurologists are calling the God brain, because it's the only region in the brain that remains active when you put Tibetan lamas inside brain scanning machines. The rest of their brain is perfectly still, except for a little bit of activity in the frontal lobes of the brain. A new neurocomputer that would not become active until today. And the processes that accompany the prophecies, I'm convinced, were designed to activate this neurocomputer. Because in order to survive, we really don't need a brain much larger than the size of a lizard's. The dinosaurs did quite well with a pea-sized brain. They were masters of their environment. Why would nature keep heaping these brains, this neurological neurocomputers, this neurological apparatus, if it were not for us to begin to guide the course of our own evolution consciously. So the processes that the wisdom keepers brought down with them were initiation practices designed to activate this dormant neurocomputer, to help us take a quantum leap in our own evolution, to help us grow new bodies that age differently, that die differently, that heal differently. And for the first time, evolutionarily, you have a species that is able to guide the course of its own evolution, not only through genetic tinkering, but through consciousness. Consciousness becomes aware of itself and is able to track its own destiny in this kind of time that turns like a wheel. And the beauty of it is that we get to do it one at a time. Each one of us gets the opportunity to do this. It's not the species at large taking a quantum leap like it has happened before in evolution, but each one of us having the choice of whether we dare to do this or not. And this is what was most precious to the prophecy keepers, was not only an announcement of a very difficult time to come, but a very optimistic message of opportunity, of saying, yes, that we can step into a millennium of gold that the Inca prophecies speak about, a millennium of gold, a millennium of peace. And that we can do that, each one of us individually. And that millennium of gold will not necessarily manifest in the world at large, but it will manifest in your world. That millennium of peace will make itself evident in your families, in your environments, where you live, how you live. And if enough of us do that, it'll set the tone for the entire planet, for villages, for cities, for nations, for an entire planet. But the leap is now individual. In the past, evolutionary leaps always occurred collectively. This one is up to each one of us. And the question today is not can we, but dare we? Dare we take this leap? Do we have the courage to take this leap? For a new kind of human to evolve, for a human that I call Homo luminous. No longer Homo sapiens, but Homo luminous. But the prophecies were very, very detailed. And for example, one of the prophecies of the Aztecs spoke about the return of Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl was one of the primary gods, creator gods of the Aztecs. And they spoke about Quetzalcoatl, who was known as the Lord of the Dawn, returning from the east like the morning star. And when the Spanish arrived in their ships with great white billowing sails, the Aztec scouts spied these ships at sea and reported back to the leader of the Aztec people, who mistakenly thought that this was the return of the Lord of the Dawn. And they welcomed the Spanish invader as gods. They were received as gods, who went on, of course, to decimate the cultures of central Mexico. Big mistake. And that began a new cycle of prophecy. In fact, the old prophecy spoke about 7 heavens of decreasing choice and 9 hells of increasing doom, and then the Lord of the Dawn shall return. And each one of the heavens and hells was a cycle of the Aztec calendar, which is 52 years long, which is the time it takes for the lunar calendar and the solar calendar to come back into sync, because they're always slightly off sync. There are 13 moons in the year, there are 12 solar months. Every 52 years they line up perfectly. 7 heavens of decreasing choice. On the 7th heaven of decreasing choice, 1492, the Spanish arrived. It was the beginning of 9 hells of increasing doom. 9 times 52-year cycles. At the beginning of the 9th hell of increasing doom, the first nuclear bomb was dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A new age of light, the beginning of the first hell of increasing doom. That ended in the 1990s. And that was to mark that transition period to the beginning of a new time, when nothing was guaranteed, nothing was said in writing. Everything was possible, everything was permissible. It could go in any direction. And each and every one of us can make a difference during this time. This was foretold as a time of crisis, of extinction of species, of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, of war, of famine, of hunger, of scarcity. But for the wisdom keepers, it's also a time of extraordinary opportunity, of tremendous opportunity. We get to forge the mythology that will take us into a millennium of gold and a millennium of peace. We get to establish the foundations of a new era in time. And not without tremendous hardship, but we do so in our families, with our children, in our schools, in the environments that we find ourselves in. And the lore of the medicine people is that each one of us chose to be here at this time. Because the shamans that I trained and study with believe that we keep coming back over and over to the earth. And that before we were born, there was a great angel that came. We were all on this great big open lawn, and this magnificent angel came out and said, you know, it's going to be a very difficult time on earth, extremely challenging. There's going to be war, there's going to be famine, there's going to be pestilence, there's going to be disease, there's going to be destruction. And we need people that can make a difference. Who wants to go? And we all stepped forward. We didn't want to miss out on the party. And we came here to make a difference. And one metaphor that I like to use is that when a storm comes, if you live in an island, you go to the high ground because the waves get big. Shamans go and look for their surfboards. The big ones are coming in. Let's take it for a ride. And that's what we're doing. This is the big time. These are the big ones. It's not a time to put food away and to find a place in the middle of the forest. It's a time to steel ourselves spiritually and emotionally and morally for a tremendous upheaval that is happening around us today. I remember 20 years ago, I knew one or two people who were in crisis. Today, I know one or two people who are not in crisis. So this upheaval is not only happening at the level of global warming and receding glaciers and tears in the ozone hole, not only at the literal and physical level, it's happening emotionally. It's happening in people's inner lives. Our belief systems are being challenged. They are no longer sustainable. The belief systems of the West have exhausted themselves. And we need to create the new ones. It's happened mythically. The mythology of the West has gone bankrupt. We've come to the end of medicine as we know it. You know, the third leading cause of death in America today are hospitals. We've come to the end of antimicrobial medicine. We've come to the end of economics, to the end of countries. Countries don't exist anymore. I mean, they do on paper. They're little colored zones in the map, but they're global corporations that are multinational, that are the new countries. So every single belief system of the West, of the Industrial Revolution, of progress, the myth of progress itself has exhausted itself. We used to think that progress was the cure for poverty, and today we're discovering that poverty is the result of progress. It's what happens when you build a mega dam, power dam in India that displaces 20,000 people. So all of the mythologies of the West have exhausted themselves, and it's up to us to create the new ones by living them. So while 30 years ago we were all spreading the bad news, today it's up to us to spread the good news. The time of possibility, even though the prophecies speak about a culling of humanity, a harvesting of souls. And we may be facing very challenging times, and I am convinced that things will get better, but they probably will get worse before they get better. But the beauty of my understanding of the prophecies is that we have the opportunity to create in our world the kind of millennium, the kind of world that we want our children's children to inherit, in our families, in our communities, in our homes, in our villages, in our workplaces. We can embody that today. And we can bring that millennium of peace in our personal space today. And if enough of us do that, we'll create a standing wave in the planet that will bring the entire planet into a new relationship with nature, between humans, into a millennium of peace and a millennium of gold. This coming year is a very important year in the cycle of prophecy, 2008. The medicine men and women that I'm in contact with say that this is the shakedown year. This is when everything gets shaken loose. This is when everything that is unsustainable, that all the fruit that cannot stay in the tree will hit the ground. It's a time when all of the systems and beliefs and relationships and structures and organizations and businesses that are ethically bankrupt will make themselves, will be exposed in our personal lives, collectively, as a country. So this is the big year coming up. 2009, they speak about a year of the installing of a new vision, the planting of the seeds of a new vision. 2010, and again, remember that prophecy is long-term, but 2010, they suspect, is a year of tremendous earth changes, of tremendous upheaval. So the prophecy is different from the oracle. The oracle is short-term. Prophecy is long-term. Long-term. It talks about moods. It talks about changes that are not coupled to time exactly yet. But we're seeing the coupling of these changes. We're seeing them happening in time. They all speak about a process of intensification, about life becoming more and more intense, increasingly accelerated, faster. Our life is incredibly intense today compared to 5 or 10 years ago. Well, that's going to be exponentially growing. And then they speak about 2012 itself, about being the time that the earth turns over, that entire year, beginning in December of 2011 to December of 2012. The year of the great upheaval, of the great upturning. And according to the wisdom keepers that I've spoken to, the individuals who will thrive and grow and flourish during this time are the ones who've taken this quantum leap already, whose lives don't need to be turned upside down at the physical, literal level, who've already done their house cleaning, who've done their personal healing, who set their relationships straight and right, who live in right relationship with the earth, who live ecologically and sustainably. This will be a tremendous time of flourishing and opportunity for you, for us. But it'll be a very challenging time for the people that are still wondering if global warming is a scientifically proven fact or not. It's an optimistic time. It's a time of tremendous possibility. The prophecy is read and reread by seers on a month-to-month basis. Because even though the large-scale prophecy has been available for centuries, the fine details, as it's happening, has to be read, almost like taking the pulse of the planet. And it changes from month to month. I spoke with one of the Apache prophecy keepers, a woman who is the Apache prophecy keeper, and she said to me recently, Alberto, our prayers are making a difference. the earth changes are not going to be happening. The earth changes are not going to be happening. Our prayers are making it, so we make a difference with our prayers, with how we live our lives, with how we relate to each other. And we have to keep in mind that while the prophecy is a very threatening and quite terrifying event for humans, it's actually a tremendous healing process for the planet. Because humans are really like a flea on the tail of a dog that can be flicked off at any moment. And the earth is a system that seeks balance. And humanity has put it so out of balance that the process of righting itself is going to be a very dramatic process. Similar to what we go through. Illness, remember that disease is a healing process. Illness is a crisis that is triggered to bring the body back into balance. Illness is not the problem. The problem is a whole lifestyle, a whole diet and relationships that are out of balance that manifest as disease. And it's the same with the planet. And those upheavals are dramatic and oftentimes violent. So we must be prepared for these times. And at the same time, remember that we came here with a mission, that we came here to be of service, to make a difference, by becoming those whom we are waiting for. Not necessarily by doing anything, though there's a lot of doing that needs to be done, but by becoming those that we are waiting for. And many of the indigenous peoples are looking forward to 2012 because it will be the return of the medicine ways. It will be the return of the ways of the feminine that were so persecuted, that were banished by the coming of the Spanish. They look forward to 2012. I remember being in the Amazon with a medicine man who said to me, Alberto, we're going to miss our white brother. You know. So I said, me too. And then he said to me, you know, this is a time of the return to the mother for all of us. And those that return to the mother are protected by the mother. And those that disdain the mother, those who've let their umbilical cord to the mother wither, those who've cut their connection to our mother, to the earth, the mother will cut their connection to them. So I'm very optimistic about this time, very positive, and I've become convinced that we can best serve the prophecy by becoming the prophecy, by becoming peace, by becoming healing, by becoming beauty, by creating that millennium of peace in our families, in our homes, in everything that we do. Know that you are the embodiment of it, and that you carry the processes, the awakening of a new human within you. And that simply by being that new human, that through a process of resonance, like two tuning forks, you will begin to awaken that compassion and that call to service and that beauty and that lightness in everyone that you're with. So thank you very much for coming today. Thank you, and blessings to you, and take the prophecy with you. Become the prophecy. Thank you.